Forrester Research, and Robert Mihalkanin from Northern Trust. Bill Doyle is a Vice President, Principal Analyst, serving e-business channel and strategy professionals with the Forrester Research Group. Bill specializes in the attitudes and behaviors of mass affluent and affluent investors, online investing, brokerages, mutual funds, and insurers, financial advisors, financial firms' websites, and customer loyalty. He's helped brokerages, asset managers, and insurers design their websites and understand their market opportunities. During his 12 years at Forrester, Bill has led the company's coverage of the financial services industry, and he has also led research in the media and online advertising industries as well. Bob Mihalkanin is the Vice President with the Northern Trust Company and the Product Manager for the Wealth Passport platform. Bob is the Product Manager for Northern Trust Wealth Passport, and he manages the team of product owners responsible for the ongoing development of Wealth Passport. Wealth Passport is the subject of our case study highlighted during today's presentation. It's a technology platform custom developed specifically to help meet the specialized, highly complex needs of ultra-high net worth families and the family offices and advisors who serve them. As a final note, before we begin, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the questions panel. And we'll answer you during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If we run out of time and can't get to your questions, we will be sure to follow up with you directly to answer you. Thank you again so much for attending. We're very excited to begin our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Bill. Bill, enjoy, everyone.
Thanks very much, Dino, and thank you to all the attendees. We're delighted to participate in this webinar. I want to start with a basic idea from Forrester, a core concept of ours these days, and that is that empowered customers have given rise to a new era. For decades, the big U.S. financial services firms grew bigger by dominating distribution and information technology. So in the age of distribution, roughly 1960 to 1990, the years aren't firm, but the idea is that top financial services firms succeeded with sprawling branch networks and lots of representatives and advisors and agents and mergers for scale and mass advertising to drive customers to those advisors and agents and branches. And the firms that prospered in this age of distribution were firms like Dean Witter and E.F. Hutton and Smith Barney, who marshaled armies of financial advisors, and banks like Nations Bank, which dominated the Southeast, eventually became Bank of America thanks to lots and lots of mergers, and mass advertising from people like Prudential with Own a Piece of the Rock and Smith Barney's We Make Money the Old-Fashioned Way. And that was the score. That was the story. That was the source of differentiation and strength for many years. Then in the age of information, leaders grew by mastering technology, including network technology that gave organizations the transaction processing power and the economies of scale they needed to grow fast. They were harnessing tech to run their businesses and serve their customers more efficiently. And at that time, it was, firms like, Ameritrade and other online, direct firms that grew up thanks to the internet. Capital One, which was actually founded in 1988 and grew into a very substantial player today by exploiting new information technology. Schwab, their market cap exceeded that of Merrill Lynch at a couple of points in the 90s because of their early online leadership and the strength of their IT. All these firms rose to prominence in the age of information. But here's the key idea. Those traditional competitive barriers, the information and distribution barriers, are crumbling. The strength of big branch and agent and advisor networks is being sapped by online and mobile access, and big investments in brand marketing are undercut by customer word of mouth and referrals, and network computing power that once required mainframes and staffs to run them, now available for small dollars in the cloud. You can rent what you need. And the service and product rollouts that used to require years of infrastructure development can now be done in a fraction of the time using digital platforms. So the only source of competitive advantage left is one that survives all this disruption, and that's an obsession with serving and delighting clients. We've entered a new age, the age of the customer, where customer-obsessed firms grow faster by spending more on customer experience and customer service. Companies have always, to some extent, called themselves customer-centric. Everybody says it of their firm. This is different. This is not about customer-centric thinking or, the customer is always right. This is more fundamental. The new power of customers means that a focus on the customer, obsession with the customer, now matters more than any other strategic imperative. And it's a commitment at the top level of the organization to customer intimacy. Relatively few incumbent firms really obsess about customers. The firms that rise to the top of Forrester's surveys, when we ask folks, for example, clients of firms, whether they feel that the firm that they're using does what's best for the client, best for them, as opposed to what's best for the firm's own bottom line. The kinds of firms that rise to the top include insurers like USAA, a perennial leader, Amica, banking firms like credit unions, Edward Jones among the full-service firms routinely scores well, Vanguard too. They score well on what we call it customer advocacy, the perception on the part of customers that the firm really does have their best interests at heart. Other firms do fine, but most wealth management firms, like the big wirehouses, only around half of their customers rate them high on customer advocacy, high on having the customer's best interests at heart. But the firms that are really setting the pace these days, when it comes to customer obsession and really working hard to deliver what customers need, are software firms like these new, robo-advisors, Betterment and Wealthfront and Financial Engines, Lending Club. These guys are following a script established by technology firms, especially these internet firms, of just going crazy about figuring out what customers need and trusting that the business will follow. The story, we've seen this play out, a number of times across a number of industries. We've seen it happen in music and travel and payments. I've been talking about, software companies emerging that deliver better experiences for less than established companies do. I'll give you just one illustration that I'm fond of because I lived through a bunch of it. From the news industry, for years, centuries really, print newspapers had customers locked in. And then websites created limitless distribution and free media. Just as some traditional media companies started to figure out how to build decent digital businesses, boom, another revolution hits with anybody able to break news on Twitter and mobile devices. And the piece of this I saw up close and personal was as a pup right out of college. I went to work at Newsweek. This was the early 80s, the fat years, hundreds of journalists. Every issue was gorged with ads. And it was a real cash cow for the parent Washington Post company. Okay, fast forward to the 2000s. Newsweek gets sold by the Washington Post company, for $1 and merged with the Daily Beast. And then not long after that, Daily Beast shut the print operation down entirely. Someone else is trying to resurrect it now. But the point I love about this, selling Newsweek for $1 was really just a foreshadowing of the quintessential event of this revolution, which was when the Washington Post company itself was sold to the guy who reinvented media delivery, Jeff Bezos. I mean, talk about evidence of the revolution being afoot. If this doesn't sum up the transition to a new world order, I don't know what does. And after all of us have seen, industry after industry get revolutionized by digital technology, it's now time, and we're going to see it happening in wealth management. Why now? Well, all the software required to transform industries like wealth management finally works. This is from Mark Andreessen's manifesto, Why Software is Eating the World. We've been anticipating this for a couple of decades, right, since the emergence of the Internet channel. But now all the pieces are finally in place. On the back end, it's Internet-based services and new programming tools that make it easier to launch new software-powered products than ever before, whether it's open source stuff or $99 developer kits. And there's a technology like faceted search, which enables users to progressively zero in on what they want. And we're going to hear more about how Northern Trust uses that to help clients drill down through complex data sets like accounts and securities. And then there's technology like APIs, application programming interfaces, that enable a level of integration with partners that didn't exist just a few years ago. The startups use a lot of this, but established firms like Fidelity use account aggregation to pull together a consolidated picture of the customer's financial life and then visualize it, offer a visualization of the client's asset allocation across accounts, not just those accounts at Fidelity. And the technology finally works too in terms of customer-facing technologies. My last bullet here. Customer-facing technologies that deliver a better customer experience. Everybody's got broadband at this point, and everyone's connected all the time, often through mobile devices. Video is possible, graphical representations, visualizations that help clients draw insights into where they stand. Example of this is Vanguard's homepage. Just as soon as a client is logged in, they get a picture of what they have and how they're doing. Terrific visualization. This is all happening now because clients and advisors are ready. U.S. adults now spend more time online than watching TV. And most of them are always connected thanks to mobile devices. More than a quarter of U.S. adults have already made the mobile mind shift, expecting that what they need is going to be available at their moment of need on the device of their choice. I'll show you how it breaks down across generations. Young adults are most likely to have made this mobile mind shift, but they're just the early indicators. We've seen this slope Forrester has for every significant new technology that we've asked about over the last 15 years. And we know just what's going to happen. This curve is going to rise as older adults connect with more devices from more locations and get comfortable using more applications. But as I say, what's really significant about the mobile mind shift is the attitude change. The shifted customer expects that any information or service they want is going to be available on any appropriate device at their moment of need. And they judge firms on their ability to deliver that. Clients and advisors are ready not just in the discover phase. This circle is the customer life cycle, the client life cycle. Digital permeates every phase of this, including the explore cycle. More investors research investment products online than by phone or in person, and they're more likely to transact in this channel. Clients prefer the online channel. This is just one data point. More than 2 to 1 for buying or selling mutual funds. It's 3 to 1 for stocks. And this pertains to other transactions as well, like transferring money around accounts. And they prefer digital. They're turning to digital channels to engage with customers over time as well. Clients also overwhelmingly prefer the online channel for account balances and holdings. It's more than 3 to 1 online versus paper or other channels that they would choose. And it's not just account information, how am I doing? it's also how they interact with their agents and advisors. We all know that frequent advisor interactions drive revenues. The more frequently the representative of the firm is in touch with the customer, the better the relationship and the higher amount often the company makes, the more the client is paying. And sure enough, when we do a correlation, we see that at the top of this list, the total number of interactions with an advisor through any touch point has the strongest association with how much gets paid to the advisor and the firm. But look at what's next. The next choices are all digital choices. These digital touch points are making the biggest difference. They have the strongest correlation to payments to advisors and agents. And it's interactions through digital touch points that are more highly correlated to fees paid than the traditional touch points like over the phone and in person. All of which begs the question, how should you respond? What do you do? And our answer there is one real simple, straightforward one is build better digital services. Digital remains a dangerously low priority at many wealth management firms that are built around person-to-person relationships. The traditionally direct firms like Fidelity do a very good job online. But as I noted at the top, some of the best digital experiences today are coming from well-funded startups like the robo-advisors or digital investment managers such as Betterment. This Betterment's interactive tools, which anyone can get at, they're beautiful, they're easy to use, and so responsive. Reacting immediately to a change in the variables, a slider bar up in the upper left, for example, move that slider to a more conservative allocation, for example. The implications, the scenario in the body of the screen, the graph changes immediately, and the more the customer plays, the more they learn, really. You should respond by supporting escalation to reps throughout digital interactions. That's your angle. Person-to-person firms, anyway, have these advisors, representatives, private bankers, whoever they are, and a good digital presence always enables somebody to pop out of that or to reach out to a representative when they're using a service. And it's essential to use digital touch points to enhance advisor-client relationships. The smart firms are going to use digital to support, to complement the relationship between the client and the advisor. I'm sure people on the phone know, on this call know, but many senior executives still, harbor this notion that this is about disintermediation. No, digital channels are about supplementing and enhancing the advisor-client relationship. Firms like Vanguard are busy enhancing the advisor-client relationships with video conferencing and screen sharing to support collaboration between the client and the advisor. For firms that serve boomers, who still want to interact with humans, blending human and digital is the greatest competitive advantage that you'll have. And I want to raise one last point and then pass the baton to my colleagues on the phone. Smart firms are going to respond, sorry for the typo there, by obsessing over the customer experience, obsess over the design of interactive tools, and define the customer experience in terms of what customers really want. Smart firms are fiercely, in this age of the customer, fiercely loyal to their users. And that, I think, is a fine segue to what Northern Trust has done with Tandem 7. So I'm passing the microphone off now.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Go ahead.
This is Bob Mihalkanin. Let me start by saying that at Northern Trust, clients are central to everything we do and is reflected in our mission statement to be our clients' most trusted financial partner, delivering market-leading capabilities through exceptional people and technology. In 2011, the Wealth Passport product team that I manage partnered with Tandem 7 to help implement this vision even more through understanding our clients, studying their environments, and as a result, empowering our clients in a way that we had never tried before. I've been asked to share that story with you today. Step one was to talk to our clients. Of course, we've been talking to prospects and clients at Northern Trust for over 125 years, but what made this project unique was in the way that we attempted to speak to them and identify what made them tick. We visited a large sampling of our family office client base and interviewed over 50 users in those various family offices. We then identified the three main personas within those family offices and then dove even deeper to further understand their needs, both within and outside of the office. Then within each persona, we identified their responsibilities, their information needs, their likes and dislikes, their technical profiles, and more. Our next step was to conduct user interviews that would help identify their key issues and held further discussions with them to prioritize their pain points. This gave us a great place to start. We worked with Tandem 7 to develop a prototype that brought our vision to life based on all the information we had gathered so we could conduct usability sessions with those same clients that we had interviewed. During the usability sessions, we incorporated their feedback back into the prototype and then worked with a different set of clients who had not been part of our earlier engagement to confirm that we hit the mark. So in short, what this slide shows you is we empowered our clients to have them involved in the requirements process and then iterated around their input multiple times, all this before we developed a single line of Wealth Passport code. Now I'd like to give you a view into how the persona development plays out in real life. As you can see, here's an example of a customizable dashboard that we developed for the head of the family office based on their stated needs. In this example, the CEO can come in, get a quick look at the net worth of the family, view recent investment performance on a dashboard, all while accessing Northern Trust's expertise right here on his desktop. The controller, who we learned had more administrative needs, can log in, check to see if they have any intraday trades that need his attention, view any intraday cash projections, act upon any pending corporate actions, and view his currency rates. And finally, our third persona, the individual family member themselves, can log in, see his total net worth, while gathering information on what's happening in the markets, getting news and analysis, and then, of course, at that point, he can log off and enjoy his millions. A benefit that we didn't initially anticipate of our approach was in discovering those aha moments that sparked additional needs and enhancements. There were many of those, but I'd like to cover a few examples to give you an idea what I'm talking about. The first example is that we had designed a prototype for a part of the application that we call Portfolio Explorer, which was to be used to help clients with their day-to-day information needs. In fact, in the prototype, we had separated out holdings information from transactions information into two different views. During usability testing, however, our client said, and this is a direct quote from our client, there's a fundamental tie between our holdings and our transactions. We see the holdings information, and then we want to know any recent transactions on those same holdings. When viewing transactions, we want to know if we even hold those securities anymore. So based on our usability testing, we modified Portfolio Explorer in the prototype to meet that need. Another aha moment came around how clients perceived our data. Clients thought that our data at times was incorrect, and as you can imagine, this is a big deal for a firm like Northern Trust when we're showing clients their investments and how they're performing. But what we found was the data was correct. It was more about the way we were presenting the data that led them to believe that there were variances or inconsistencies. And so while this wasn't in our original scope for the first release, we decided it was important enough to include in this upgrade. As I mentioned earlier, we developed a concept in our prototype called Portfolio Explorer that would help meet the day-to-day information needs of our clients. The question we had to answer was, how do you address the very different information needs of family offices in such a way that we don't limit their access to data, but give clients an easy tool to mine that data? Our answer was accomplished by adding a faceted search capability. So what you see on the screen is the search capability that we introduced to Portfolio Explorer that our clients have grown used to using in the retail space. You simply click on checkboxes on the left-hand side, and the focus of what's displayed in the center panel narrows to reflect what they want to see. So I'll give you an example. If you want to search for just your equity holdings, you would select equities as a facet. If you wanted to narrow down your search even more to say common stock, you would select that facet. Getting even more precise, if you want to find a specific holding to see your security exposure, you would simply choose the security identifier that makes most sense to you, whether that be QSIP, ticker symbol, ISIN, or even security description. Update your search criteria, and that narrows down your search to your exposure across your accounts and entities within the family office. We also give clients an easy way to customize their entire Portfolio Explorer. They included dragging and dropping columns, adding or removing columns, positioning them on the page, and sizing the columns the way the client wanted to see them. They can add groupings, which is based on a concept we call attributes, which I will cover in a few minutes, and then save these groupings to their view in what we call their view gallery. The idea is to allow users to log in, click through their views to instantly get what they want, print or export that particular data, and then exit the system, again, after getting the information that they wanted for that day. They don't have to learn all of our reports in our report library, and we currently have over 100, which in the past meant they would have to attempt to decipher which report met which specific need, and then figure out how to enter parameters to get exactly what they wanted. And since the same concept resonates on the transaction side as it does on the holding side, they can use the same facets to see transactions on those holdings or create completely different views showing data such as pending and settled transactions, transactions posting in the last week, or specific transactions like investment manager payments. I had mentioned the creation of attributes before, and we describe these as characteristics that help a client define the way they see accounts, not the way Northern Trust sees accounts. So for example, they may tag an account as being for a specific family member in a certain trust, managed by a specific investment manager with a distinct investment style. Attributes allow them to do this across all of their portfolios and accounts, and then they can use this to view groupings in both their Portfolio Explorer and our custom reporting application. So I would add that while this concept existed in our earlier versions of Wealth Passport, working with Tandem 7 helped us create an enhanced user experience, leveraging faceted search that helped them manage their various attributes, based on the feedback. It has helped to make a lot more sense to our clients, which ultimately helps decrease the calls to our client servicing partners as well as our help desk. Finally, we introduced an add new content capability, which gives the user the ability to customize their own desktop. And we leverage concepts like drag and drop to make the customization of their dashboards more intuitive. So in summary, at Northern Trust, we've been talking to prospects and clients for over 125 years, and we built this central principle into the project. We attempted to speak to them and identify what made them tick. We visited a large sampling of our family office client base. We identified 3 main personas and attempted to understand their needs, both within and away from the family office. Our goal was to understand our clients, study their environment, and through technology, empower our clients in a way that we had never tried before. By partnering with Tandem 7, we're able to build an application that reflects our mission, again, to be our clients' most trusted financial partner, delivering market-leading capabilities through exceptional people and technology. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dino for some closing comments.
Thanks, Bob. I think it's great to see the evidence, the benefits of the work, the approach that we took. I think that, we're only able to see so much in the context of the webinar here, but I think the application is a really great outcome from the efforts that were focused, as you said, on those, super pleasing your users. What I wanted to talk about a little bit at the end here before we open it up to questions is really around what's next. If indeed it is the age of the customer and our goal is to obsess on the customer experience, and the digital touch points that they have with an enterprise like Northern Trust, what do we have to do next? What do we have to do to super please to continue to meet the expectations and to grow that affinity and that relationship and retain the business and expand the business to the next set of up and coming customers? And I just put up a couple points up here. The true portability of the interactions across channels is super critical. As Bill mentioned. As Bill mentioned, there's an echo. There's a desire to be able to start any interaction on any channel on an appropriate device to be able to pick it up. We all have the experience of being starting an activity online and then being in a place where we have to call the service or customer support, and then we have to start the interaction all over again. And the frustrations there are just too much. And when there's mission critical information or financial, performance at stake here, it's one thing when it's your mobile phone and you're just trying to, fix a problem with it. But it's a different thing when it's, money movement. And so the systems really have to have that kind of seamless kind of crossover points where the same session data, the same context, the same information is available continuously. Another thing is to adopt really a page out of the innovators' playbook around continuous improvement. One of the reasons why some of those innovators are able to perform and meet customer needs is that if there's a culture of using the internet and building for the internet, not just building for big business systems, but building with an expectation that people are looking for change. They're expecting change. We've all become conditioned that our systems are constantly updating. If we have mobile phones and we have updates turned on, we get little app notifications, we get constant enhancements. It's a little bit addictive to come wake up every day and see, I've got an update, a new enhancement, a new feature. And used to be that people were very afraid of iterating on the user's experiences, that they would disorient people or they would add too much change. And in reality, if it stays the same for too long, it becomes numbing. And the expectation is to continually innovate, continually add and extend and be responsive to customers' changing needs. And if that, that doesn't mean the big 5-year plans of big iron and big, changes to the applications. It means that that change is constant, that change is expected, and it's critical because, there's a lot of complexity in these systems, and, you have to be able to manage that complexity and manage the release of that functionality, and clients are expecting it to be done incrementally. The last thing is really just the responsiveness of the applications, certainly to the changing regulatory environments, to transparency, to ad hoc reporting, to the information that needs to be, showed in different ways, to be exposed and communicated and shared in ways that are not always immediately understood, and that, if we build a sort of static model for the way the information is presented, we're going to lose out on the opportunity and on the need, really, and it becomes a mad scramble every time there's a new level of reporting and disclosure to try to build new functionality, new information into the system, new screens. Whereas, with something like the Explorer that you saw, it's just a matter of being able to tweak the view and provide that information. And I think that continuing down that path, continuing to be responsive in the regulatory context and it was going to put extra demands on the applications to not just super please the users, but to be able to deliver that information. Again, that hasn't even been yet to be determined, by the current standards. So we have our work cut out for us, and I think at this point I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor to some questions. We have a few that came in at the beginning that I'll go ahead and start with, and then I encourage folks as they're listening here to continue to send questions our way. The first question is for Bob. The question reads, typically large application relaunches at big banks like this one take years and are riddled with problems, scope creep, budget overruns, difficulties with cutovers, user acceptance issues, performance problems, etc. What were the main reasons why this project was so successful?
Well, Dino, certainly all the things I covered previously were a big part of it. Some additional things that we didn't really talk about that come to mind are, senior management support at all levels for the project, and visibility into what you're doing is important. Working with Tandem 7 and building out the prototype and the personas allowed us to hold meetings throughout the process with them and show our progress, which they got really excited about. Rather than writing up requirements and handing them over the wall to technology, we were very transparent with senior management. We showed them our prototype, we showed them the personas, we showed them the pain points, as painful as those were. So there was full transparency and support throughout the entire process. I think another key was involving our technology partners at the very start. We held a couple of brainstorming sessions with Tandem 7 and our technology partners to understand, the tools that were at their disposal, if you will, the application development tools in their toolkit. And, again, working with the wireframes and the prototyping, it kind of gave them an idea as to what our vision was, so they could start looking into the various development tools that we had at Northern Trust, and then if there were things that we didn't have, to start exploring what was out there and how they might fit in our information and architecture environment. I think those are the two, key things that come to mind that really, made this a successful project. It was the methodology we used.
Thanks, Bob. I have a question here for Bill. It says, Forrester showed a performance screenshot from Vanguard, so on one of the slides. But the questioner, believes that the performance needs to be put in context by a financial advisor. Why does Forrester believe this is a good idea?
This is Bill. Well, one strong reason we feel this is that we see it in our survey data. We ask folks, investors, what they've done in the last 3 months or the last 12 months, give them lots of choices, and 30% of U.S. online adult investors viewed their portfolio performance online in the past 3 months. It's second only to being able to see my balances, or checking balances and see what do I have. Is this, desire to see how am I doing, see my portfolio performance. And it is true that many full-service firms, advisor or person-to-person firms, are reluctant to offer this, but many of the direct firms do now offer it, like Vanguard and others, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, et cetera, and some full-service firms as well. I guess my key point is the cat's out of the bag. The toothpaste is out of the tube. People know that this is possible. They want to see it, and so and they know you have it. So it's essential to offer this. And the challenge then becomes, how do you put it into context? How do you make it usable? How do you use it in a way that supports the advisor-client relationship?
Thanks, Bill. Here's a question for Bob again. The question is, how open were clients to providing their insights to help you build the personas?
That's a great question. I would start by saying that in our space, the ultra high net worth clients that have family offices representing them, they're always willing to sit down and share their insights. And I think in general, clients are very receptive to participating in this organized, structured way of gathering and prioritizing their feedback. They felt like they were being heard. They shared very candid feedback, which is great. And then, once we started showing them the artifacts that we were building, the prototypes and holding the usability sessions, they knew that Northern Trust was listening to them, and that we wanted even further refinement of their needs. So I think that again, showing things to the clients as early and often in the process is what you really need to strive for. That's part of obsessing over the client. And so I think that they, like I said, they're always open to share feedback, but certainly having the materials and doing what we did helped facilitate that a great deal.
Yeah, I remember, Bob, that people were oftentimes complaining about things they couldn't do in the system, and sometimes the reaction to that from the client is to want to train them in the meeting and to tell them, no, here's how you do it. But from our perspective, if a user doesn't understand how something works, it doesn't work. And I think that what you guys were able to do was let your clients speak, sometimes rants, sometimes just, without a lot of expertise, about what your old system did, and just allow that to sort of sink in, and that information to then translate into new designs. And I think that's got to be one of the reasons why this time around it was more successful.
Right. I would agree with Dino. I would agree with you that that I'm as guilty as anyone in meeting with clients that I'll get pulled into that rabbit hole and get into the details with them. But I think what worked in working with you as a firm is that you could be that unbiased person collecting that information, who knew enough about our systems to answer the general questions, but separated you from our subject matter experts, if you will, to gather that unfiltered feedback, as well as like you said, take a step back, listen to what they're saying, and document that for Northern Trust.
Thanks, Bob. I'm going to alternate. I've got a question here again for Bill. Question reads, Forrester cited the significance of APIs. Can you give an example?
Yeah, let's see. The example in the slides that I showed was account aggregation, Fidelity. But it strikes me that the examples that come right to mind are from startups. Startups are much more aggressive about exploiting APIs than established incumbent firms. Dino, you talked about continuous improvements, iterative, frequent changes versus the big bang environment of 3 to 5 year intervals, and we certainly subscribe to that. We see it when we understand, and we too believe that is the future course, and it's demonstrated by the disruptors out there most frequently, and this is something that established firms are coming up to speed on. But I think of one in particular, the leading robo-advisor, digital investment manager, Wealthfront. They say quite openly they couldn't have existed just 4 years ago. It's thanks to application programming interfaces, thanks to APIs, that they're able to operate. APIs, they lean heavily on APIs from data providers like Xignite and Bloomberg. They lean very heavily on APIs from their custodian, Apex Clearing. They use APIs from Apex to open accounts, to fund accounts, to trade those accounts. Just about everything is happening via API. And as a result, Wealthfront is a lean organization, 50 people, mostly developers, and growing like wildfire, growing at more than 400% a year. They just raced through $1 billion in assets in May, and now they're over $1.5 billion. Small beer for this industry, but at this growth rate, these guys will be credible financial services firms in no time. And it's thanks to lightweight, meaning easy and simple to use APIs.
Yeah, that architecture has been invested in for many years. APIs have been around for a long time, but the lightweight, restful, SOA performant APIs that are there, that are lean and flexible, right, allowing users, businesses to build these innovative UIs. And of course, parallel the evolution that has been these frameworks that build these single-page applications, that build these really rich, what used to be called rich internet applications, that can leverage those rich APIs. I think that combination really is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
A question came in for Bob. How did you support the customer-directed changes for views and reports, and how do you maintain their preferences?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, our approach is with a lot of our capabilities is to put that it's customer-directed changes that are in the hands of the customers to make the changes. So, for example, they can create all the attributes that they want on the fly, and those will automatically, apply to the database, so that they can leverage those when doing their faceted searches. They can, as I said earlier, they can drag and drop columns, they can add columns, they can add groupings, they can set sorting, they can resize the different column widths. And so we put all of that in the tools themselves. And once you conceptually train the clients as to those basics, they kind of run with it. Again, like I had said, with faceted search, a lot of people, that's an easy concept for them to latch onto. They see it, on their retail sites when they're buying cars, or when they're buying electronics, when they're buying shoes. We used all kinds of examples, and those were some of the ones that the light bulb went on with clients when we were talking about in the prototype faceted search. They would say, oh, it's just like so-and-so, and it's a process of elimination where as you're clicking on boxes, you're narrowing down what we want to see. So it's not so much, supporting the customer-directed changes. They're doing those on their own, and maintaining preferences, they do that as well on their own. We did have a strong marketing campaign with high-level training, some videos, some interactive training sessions to give them the concepts of how these tools would work. But that's kind of the beauty of the design, is once you got them educated on the basics, they ran with it. I recently talked to somebody who was out visiting a client who had built 18 different views in their gallery, which met a majority of their daily needs to know cash balances, exposure, to specific stocks, which transactions had happened yesterday, had expenses being paid. So, we continually get client feedback through call reports, and it's nice to see the adoption of the product and how clients are using it. I would also add that, we didn't stop with our rollout. We had multiple rollout stints, and, working with Tandem 7, we didn't deliver everything at once. I think you have to be nimble, and as we talked about, iterate. We determined what would be our minimal product that we wanted to deliver. But working with Tandem 7, we had a roadmap, if you will, for other things that clients had just said that were things they would like to see, but determined were lesser priorities. So even after we rolled it out, we had those artifacts that we could leverage in that architecture of information that we could build upon. So really, it's not about supporting the client as much as it is, giving them the ability for complete customization of how they want to see the information.
You know, I think there's just something really interesting about the way this came together, Bob. We spent, you know, there was a lot of capability to use in the old reporting models that the system had before, but people couldn't play with it. They had to know what they were looking for, like you said. Whereas in the faceted setting, you know, people can play, they can experiment, they can turn on and off certain filters and just see the real-time information change. And that freedom, that ability to experiment, that kind of rapid or instant feedback, it makes a difference. People can learn and understand the system better. And then, of course, underneath that, there has to be this mega data set. I mean, you guys have billions of transactions and holdings, and for all that stuff to be responsive and to be, you know, available in that kind of a real-time setting to the user, to allow them that ability to experiment, to become comfortable with what things do, that's one of the hallmarks, I think, of what was built, which I think, you know, using big data kind of architecture and technology rather than just database architectures opened the door for that kind of, let's just call it responsiveness in the way that the data gets filtered and presented. And because of that freedom, that's, I think, the way that people learn the system. You know, they're used to being able to, you know, click and see things instantaneously change, and they can get an intuitive understanding. The other thing I think about, you know, your custom data, it's really, again, borrowing from Internet 2.0, which is the tagging and tag cloud, you know, meta tagging and hashtagging and all the kinds of things that everybody is comfortable with in their private and their social lives. You know, that's a feature that is instantaneously understandable to people, and especially the way that it's being done now, similar to the faceted search. It's right away, instantaneous. You put the tag in there, then you can show up in your filter list, and you can filter based on it. You don't like what's in there, you can go back and change it. And so that's all really dynamic and, you know, down to an individual user that's saved in the system for them. Here's one more question for you, Bob. Question is, besides the three personas that you noted, were there any other personas that were discovered?
Yes, we actually had 5 personas that we came up with. I would say that, you know, in this presentation we talked about 3 of them. 2 others that came to light were the investment manager or the investment analyst in the family office. The needs were very similar to that of the controller. You know, that person was looking more at performance, or, you know, how do I harvest, you know, losses, things like that. So those needs were very similar. And then the other thing we looked at was the client servicing partner themselves. You know, to Bill's point, you know, making the tools available to the person who's going to be talking to the client, and making them powerful for them so they can view the client information. One thing we've done is they can emulate to see what the client has on their desktop. So if they're not trying to replicate what the client is telling them, they can actually see what's on the client and what the desktop and what the client has done themselves. So again, I only mentioned the 3 for this presentation, but we did have you know, 5 different personas that we identified and incorporated into the design.
Great. We might have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I know we're rounding up to the top of the hour in just 5 minutes here. One for you came in, Bill. The question is, Bill showed an example of account aggregation from Fidelity. Will all firms need to offer account aggregation?
Well, perhaps ultimately yes, but certainly not now. I'd say for many firms, account aggregation is not essential. It's a nice to have. And once again, I can turn to some of our data, our survey data. If I can find it here. We ask folks not just what they use, what they've done, but how important it is that a website have certain features. And the features that are most important, just like the features that are most used, are account information, like transaction history and balances and performance, which I talked about. At the bottom of the list, those features out of a 30 some item list, the things that had the fewest survey respondents saying, yeah, I need this, is balances for accounts held at other institutions. So clients aren't seeing this, at least affluent. These are people with $1 million or more in investable assets. They're not clamoring for account aggregation. It's a nice to have, and I'll add one more point here. Our conviction is that it's useful only if the firm deploys it in order to provide more insight to the customer. Balances alone, nice to have, but not essential. What's key is using that, leveraging the data in order to do something like showing asset allocation across your many financial services relationships, if you have a number of them, or even using it to get to recommendations, relevant and specific to the customer, recommendations on what to do based on this understanding of their overall financial picture. Otherwise, aggregation for aggregation's sake, forget about it.
Can we squeeze one more in here? Thank you. Thanks, Bill. The last question, and then we'll wrap up, is for you, Bob. And the question is, how did you balance organizational priorities between what functionality clients were asking for and what you were able to provide?
Well, I think that's a challenge for any organization. To me, it's about prioritization. I think the fact that we took an iterative approach to development, as well as to the rollout, helped. We developed in 3 different phases. We kind of built our foundation, and then got feedback on that, and then built out more client-facing capabilities. And then we converted clients in multiple waves, 3 waves, so that we didn't want to do a big bang rollout. We did a subset of clients, and then took a pulse, and then rolled it out to the rest of the clients. So what I saw was that using this methodology that we used after the rollout, we had virtually no rework to do, which wasn't the case in the past. And when I say rework, I mean by that, talking to clients, showing them something, and them saying, well, that's not the way I would have done it, or that's not the way I would structure it. And so after the rollout, a lot of the focus was really on the enhancements that clients asked for based on working with the tools. And that was something that I guess like that the process helped minimize those priorities, because we feel like we hit the top priorities first, and then we moved right into enhancing the product further.
Great. It was a pleasure working on that with you guys. Folks, I think we are at the top of the hour here. I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank our presenters for sharing their insights and for sharing the case study on the Wealth Passport project. This webinar will be recorded and will be up within the next day, and folks who were able to attend today will be emailed a link so that they can consume the information online and maybe share with colleagues. And certainly everybody appreciate the questions and the interaction today. It was a great showing. Great job, everyone. Hope you all got some value out of it. I know I did. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.